So we had come through most of 1 Corinthians. So I'm just going to go forward fast and get down to... There were some key verses here. One of them, not be found naked. Naked versus being clothed. Clothed being a spirit in a body. Naked being a disembodied spirit. So, 2 Corinthians 5:2, for indeed in our mortal body we groan, that's this house in that verse, longing for our spirit to be embodied in our resurrected body. That's what we want. Inasmuch as we, having put it on, having put on the resurrected body, will never be a disembodied spirit, or shall not be, as this one, that will not be found naked. All right, so that's an important concept. Let me pick up another couple of these. We went through all of these, but of course, tense are this unclothed, disembodied spirit, clothed, and embodied spirit, mortal, this life, and life, of course, the resurrected life. And so we said, for indeed, while we're in this mortal body, we groan, being burdened because we do not want to have a disembodied spirit, but that our spirit may be in our resurrected body, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. So it's interesting, Christians don't go from life to death. Remember, Jesus said to Martha, whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Christians go we go this way. We go from death to life in our relationship with Christ. We go from death to life, but from then on, we go from life, not to death, we go from life to life. From life to better life. From life to glorified life.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a nice progression, because we've been transferred from death to life. So how then could a Christian possibly die?
Yeah.
We don't. And I really like this one. He who prepared us for this very purpose. What purpose? If you chase that antecedent, it's this. He who prepared us to be a whole and perfect resurrected person is God. That's what he prepared us for. And then how does he do that? He gave us his Spirit as a pledge. The Spirit, we have the Holy Spirit. Well, that's just more, it's more than just, oh, we have the Holy Spirit. No. Jesus said, those who, it was Paul or Jesus, one of them, maybe they both said it, that when we receive Christ, we become one spirit with him. So his Spirit, our spirit is like subsumed, attached to his Spirit, never to be unattached. So that in death, wherever his Spirit is, wherever he is, there we are as well. Okay, so that's how we get where we need to be, literally, to the second coming. And so we looked at this one. This is often understood and misquoted by a lot of people, because what the understanding here is almost opposite to what most people think. We think, oh, to be absent from the body should be at home in the Lord. But if you really chase down the metaphors, therefore being always of good courage and knowing that while we are at home in the body,
Clothed.
we are absent from the Lord. And I always, when I read that and thought about it, I thought, well, wait a minute. Jesus promised us we would never be absent. That he would be with us always to the end of the world. I will be with you always to the end of the age. Well, then how then are we absent from the Lord? He's only talking about the absence of the physical presence. Jesus is not now with us in this room. Although he's spiritually present, he is not physically present. That's the absence. And so if you take that metaphor away, therefore, being always of good courage and knowing that while we're at home in the present mortal body, we are absent from the Lord where he is in his resurrected body. Remember, he left. And he said, I'm going to go prepare a place for you, and I will come again, that where I am, see, he can say that, where I am, there you may be. Because they're still in their mortal bodies. That you may be there where I am. So that's an interesting one. Now, so we are of good courage and I say to prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home. Okay, we don't want to be absent. We want to be at home. Well, where's home? Well, it's where he is in his mortal body. So let's get that going. We are of good courage, I say, prefer rather to be absent from the mortal body and to be in our resurrected body, where the Lord is in his resurrected body. To get rid of this, to remove the physical distance and to be where he is. That's where we're going to be for eternity, in his physical presence. That's pretty neat. And then this one sometimes gets quoted out of context too. Therefore, we also have as our ambition, whether at home or absent, to be pleasing to him. So what does that mean? If I can get it to go here. There we go. Therefore, we have as our ambition, whether we're with him in our resurrected body or physically absent from him in our mortal body, to be pleasing to him. So whichever state, now or then, that's what we want. We want to be pleasing to him. And then we touched on this one. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. Remember, there's a companion verse to that, companion idea to that. It is appointed, remember this one? It is appointed unto a man once to die. And after that, judgment. So for both the wicked and the redeemed, the next order of business is what? It's judgment. We die, we are out of the mortal body, in the resurrected body, but the wicked have some kind of body. They have some kind of resurrected life, but not to what we're going to experience. Not for that, but for the purpose of eternal separation, eternal punishment. That's really hard for us to contemplate. That's just mind-boggling to think that someone could be separated from God and from the presence of anything good for eternity. It just almost boggles the mind. Well, that's where we're headed. We will appear before the judgment seat of Christ. That's that bema judgment. The unbelievers will go immediately to the great white throne judgment. Now, well, there's that verse. I knew it was in there somewhere. So it's appointed unto a man once to die. After this comes judgment. That's very important. If somebody comes to you and says, I died and went to heaven and God let me come back. There have been a few of those. I've seen them on Christian TV shows, yes. selling books. And somebody asked one of those guys one time, well, just for curiosity's sake, how tall was Jesus? He said, about 6'2".
No, he wasn't.
Listen, if you really died, you're not coming back. Yeah. Right? That's why Lazarus was asleep. Oh, he's asleep. He's asleep. Anybody that Jesus was going to bring back from the dead, he just said, oh, they're asleep. Now, they're really dead physically, but God knows that Jesus is going to bring them back from the dead. Their spirit hasn't been transferred over. It's just still there. It's just hanging out, and hasn't gone anywhere. Because once death really occurs, there's no coming back. There's no return. By the way, it also makes you think about, well, what about haunted houses? What about ghosts and poltergeists and creepy things that we see on TV? Spirits that inhabit buildings and objects and that haunt things. What are these things? Biblically, if we know the biblical worldview well, what do we say about that? It's very easy to process that. Because once you actually die, your spirit goes to the judgment, and that's the end of that. Then these things have to be something else besides the human beings. They may be counterfeit personalities fashioned after or copying the personality of some person who had lived, and maybe they knew how to, maybe that demon knew how to do that really well because he actually inhabited them. So maybe people are dying and leaving demons behind. Who knew them pretty well. And anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other animal.
What about Samuel?
Oh, I love Samuel. It was interesting because Samuel goes to the witch of Endor.
Well, he didn't go. Saul did.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Saul did. And then he says, I want you to conjure Samuel up for me. And if you read the text, it really seems like Samuel did show up, but that she was rather taken aback. She had conjured a few spirits in her time, but not like this. And what Samuel did was he really appears coming back very much like Moses and Elijah did with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. And they're in the resurrected bodies, they're hanging out, they got their name tags. I think that's how they knew they were Moses and Elijah. And so here comes Samuel. You know, why are you disturbing my rest? You know, I'm hanging out in a really great, I'm in the millennium. I'm hanging out in a really great place. And this is, you know, what's the deal, Saul? And so what does he do? He says, your kingdom's going to be taken from you. You're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be calling up spirits or going to mediums, doing this sort of thing. Therefore, it's over for you. Your house is going to be taken down. Your house will not retain the kingdom. And so Samuel did not have great news for Saul because he did that. So, but the Saul thing was just something else. Can God send somebody back from the final state? Of course. Of course. Because he's the I am. He can I am them in the millennium. He can I am them back to the time of Saul.
The two witnesses.
Yeah, and the two witnesses in Revelation, whoever these guys are, there's a lot of speculation on what their exact identity is. But by the way, it is appointed unto man once to die. And there are two individuals in the Bible who didn't die. Enoch and Elijah. Is it possible that they're going to come back and get the fulfillment of that? They're going to die. Maybe they are. I don't know. I don't know how God will work that out. I don't know how that works, but maybe it is. Maybe it is. You know, I'm sure God has all that figured out.
And if you do, you die, huh?
So for the Christian, death, resurrection, judgment. For the unbeliever, death, resurrection, judgment. It's a pretty clean line. And I think I mentioned last week that for those who come from a Catholic background, Catholic theology, of course, has a lot of strange twists and turns to it. But one of those things is that if you die without being in a state of grace, that you're going to go to a purgatorial experience for a while, maybe a long while.
Until you get prayed out of it.
And there are all kinds of ways. But you see this whole concept. And so they have the idea of a purgatorial state, which completely contradicts what we're talking about. Why do you need a purgatorial state if there's no death, then you're going to be transferred right into your resurrected body? That's another thing. And so, a couple of other things. Saints praying for you. Well, if the saints have gone on, I mean, they're just like you and I. I mean, they're being beatified by a group of cardinals, I guess. But why do you need them to pray for you? You arrived at the same in the next life at the same time they did, right with them. You know, they're not looking back, going, "Oh yeah," or Mary or anybody else. You don't need saints to pray for you. by the way, and I don't like the Protestant system, because I don't like the word Protestant, because I didn't protest the Catholics. A lot of Christians just came to Christ and they didn't become Catholic. They didn't protest anybody. So Protestant's kind of a misnomer. It's kind of the Catholic word for us, and it's not a happy word to them, because we're all heretics as far as they're concerned. And so I don't like to be seen to be protesting everything all the time. I'm always protesting against this, protesting against that. But we don't need to worry about that. We're not going to hang out here after we're dead. It's almost contradictory, because we don't die. So we say, she died or he died. As a believer, there's a whole other dimension to that. There's a whole other side to that doesn't connect with the way a lot of us think. So unbelievers, death, resurrection, judgment. No intervening time, no purgatorial state. It's just instantaneous. So we don't die. That's the whole point. And Jesus said to Martha, everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And I think we all do. We're not going to die. Death was wiped out by Jesus at the cross. His death wipes out our death. And so therefore, we don't experience that. We looked at a couple of these diagrams, but I want to put our bodies back down here. And I like the bouncing bodies. And kicking up daisies, or I don't know, I think those are like thistles. I think that's what, so whether you die there or whether you die in the New Testament era, when your spirit is outside of your body and it becomes part of the I am, or it becomes, it takes on the time frame of the I am, where I am, there you may be. What's the difference between those 2 points in time? What's the difference between those? They're exactly the same moment. So they're the self-same moment, and all the redeemed equals the elect, okay, are there from there. Now, how did the elect get there? How did they get to this body that's taken together into the air? How did they get into this body? They chose to be there. But in God's eternal mind, in his eternal present mind, everything in history is set from the foundation of the world. Not for us, but for him. Everything, history is completely complete. It plays out completely. And so, not one person is going to be saved at the end who was not saved from the beginning. Just as Christ was crucified from the foundation of the world, so we who choose him are chosen in him from the foundation of the world. So which is true? Predetermination or free will? Both. Both. But free will is so absolute, because, by the way, having a free will that is unencumbered by the decision-making power of an outside authority, even God himself, is part of being in the image of God. Being in the image of God means that it's not just a moral image. It's not just sort of an emotional image. It is the image of who he is in his entirety. Now, obviously, he's eternal. He's infinite. And we're not. We're finite. But in a finite way, we even have sovereignty over our own will. Paul refers to that several times, by the way. He who has sovereignty over his own will, he says in Corinthians, does well. Sovereignty over your choices. But when you make those choices, when you choose Christ, he then puts you into you become part of the elect. But where was the elect formed? Where does the elect exist? It exists from the foundation of the world, just like everything else. Jesus was crucified from the foundation of the world. We are in him from the foundation of the world. We are in the likeness of his death and of his resurrection, and all of that is true of us as it is true of him. Okay? So, all the redeemed wind up there in the end of time, as it were, the elect, but they have been the elect since the beginning of the world. And God just doesn't know who you are. You are actually there in the elect, because God doesn't have to play history out as we play it out. He doesn't see it incrementally moving like this. He sees the entirety, experiences the entirety of it in one moment. That's hard for us to fathom, but he does that. Now, so if someone dies there, very close to the creation, someone dies there, kind of halfway through the Old Testament history, and maybe that's Elijah there, and maybe that's Paul there. What's the difference between all those points in time? They're all exactly the same. They're the eternal presence of God. All the redeemed are all together at one time, instantly, and all wind up at the judgment together, at the judgment seat of Christ. Therefore, we're not looking for, we don't even have to ask the question, what happens to people when they die in the interim prior to the resurrection? We don't have an interim. We don't have a span of time. We don't have that gap. There is no gap, because from the moment of death, we go directly to the resurrection. And I love that. That's our choice, but that puts us in the redeemed. That makes us the elect. And it cannot be changed. Once you receive Christ, you're locked in from the foundation of the world, and it cannot be changed. It cannot be changed. That's good for some members of some families who sort of, they knew Christ in the early days and they slipped away, and they, I don't know how God, I know how God handles that. I know what he says about that, but it's hard for us to conceive of somebody today who maybe seems to be rejecting God altogether, but yet who maybe in their childhood or their youth have received Christ. We say, well, it didn't take. It wasn't sincere. It wasn't, well, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know how God will deal with that. Death experiences, deathbed, shall we call them? Not everybody dies on a bed, but deathbed experiences are interesting, because I really think, and I think I can chase this down through Scripture, I think God confronts every person at the end of their life with a clear view of the totality of who he is. They have a final ability to accept or reject him. Maybe they never heard the name Christ. They're out there in the bush somewhere, never seen a missionary, never heard of it. But God judges on the heart. And the heart that is right is a heart that receives him. Is a heart that receives. And so when people, I think a lot of people, and I've heard doctors talk about this, and they have people who maybe weren't really Christians their whole life, and in the moment of death, something happened. Something happened. And so a person whose heart is truly against God, set against God, will, in the face of a full revelation, still reject. Will still reject God. They're not going to change their heart in an instant. So God judges on the heart. But I think God is a fair judge. And I think God is absolutely, that in judgment there will be absolutely no doubt that your rejection of God was final. I don't know how all that's going to work, but anyway, Laura, you have.
I'm a hospice chaplain, and there have been times throughout this that knowing that person in that bed that's not coming back. And I pray that, Father, please speak to them in a way that they can still hear and give them that final chance to know you. And so,
yeah, final chance for the heart. Final chance for the heart to respond as the heart will. This God judges with the heart, not on the external, but God judges with the heart.
but that,
Yeah. So,
you know, and I've seen it happen in the hospital bed and restless. You know, something's always twitching, the hand going, the feet are going, and I'll pray this, and I watch the body just calm down.
yeah. And to me, it's kind of like the thief on the cross. A lot of people gripe about the thief on the cross, right? But Jesus had a parable about that. You know, the ones who worked a lot, and the one who didn't work so much, and the one who worked for a day, all got paid the same thing. The people who worked longer griped. Jesus, and what does the master say? He said, you agreed. That was the agreement. You know. And so there are some who come late to the cross. And so like the thief on the cross. Today you'll be with me in paradise. What did he do for God? Nothing. All he did was chase evil his whole life. But in that moment, wow, Jesus looks at his heart and he says, today you're going to be with me in paradise. And he didn't have much life left. And so I think it's possible. I think there are going to be a lot of people, when we're walking in the kingdom, I think we're going to be a lot of people that we're going to look over and go, really? Really?
Seriously?
But God knows all of those decisions from the foundation.
He does. Yeah.
He knows
We're
what to say.
surprised, but
They're his people. And he's known them from the foundation of the world. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So it's all fixed. I'm not saying it's in a fixed game. It's not fixed for the choosers.
it's
Because we have free will. God gave us sovereignty over our own will. And by the way, the other part of that, of the nature of God, you know, we're created in his image. Another part of that nature is not just sovereignty, but creativity. Why are humans so creative? Why do we always have to make stuff? Why do we always have to write stuff? Write music? Right? Why do we have this stuff? Why can't we just live? And just, you know, eat, go to work, go to sleep, live our life. Why do we have to create? Because we're made in the image of God. God is a creator, and he made us as creators. We like, so when people create, they're really doing what God made them to do. That's part of who we are. 1 Thessalonians, verse 14, chapter 4, verse 14. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, by the way, second class condition, since. It's not an, it's, I always say to my Greek students, this is not an iffy if. Could very well be translated since. Since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. You could reverse that too. We're not going to precede them, and they're not going to precede us. Because what happens? What happens if I get the next verse here? Oh, anyway. We're going to get there at the same time. That moment, again, that moment. It's all the same moment. And everyone arrives at the same time. The wicked for judgment, the blessed, the redeemed for Christ's judgment, for rewards. And so it's very simple. I like Thessalonians because Why were they concerned? Do you remember? Why were the Thessalonians concerned? Somebody wrote to them that the second coming had already happened. In 2 Thessalonians, he deals with that. Somebody claiming either from a word or a letter from us that the Lord's coming has already happened. No. And of course, then he talks about the Antichrist has to come and all these things have to happen. But in that 1 Thessalonians passage, we get this idea that we're all going to be caught up together, and we meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. But God will bring, if he's going to bring with him, if Jesus is bringing with him all the saints in the air, they're all coming with him. Well, that's the dead have already gone forward. But we who are alive and remain also will get caught up and be part of the same entry crowd. We'll be part of the same army. So we all get there at the same moment. You just have to see that in your mind. Everybody's arriving at the same time. So that's kind of a neat thought. And they got there by choice as well. So the wicked got there by choice. That was their choice. They had sovereignty over their own will. They stood their ground and did not submit to God. And that's fixed from the foundation of the world. Now, this is a little diagram that just sort of, this is the little string that kind of pulls a lot of stuff together for the whole Bible, for theology. And this is what I was doing while you guys were eating. I had to create this little PowerPoint. Because I'd never done one before. I used to do it on chalkboard. Okay. But I don't get chalk over you guys' living room. So, the number 3 is pretty important in the Bible, is it not? Okay. What I'm going to suggest to you that as we look at Scripture carefully, that everything about God himself and about his creation is triadic. And you'll recognize all of these. There are 3 realms. Now, a lot of people, here's the problem. Eastern mysticism, New Ageism when it comes over into the West, but sort of Eastern mysticism is dualistic. There's a natural realm and a supernatural realm. Just 2 things. A lot of Christians, via Aristotle and Plato and Greek thinking in the West, adopted a dualistic view. Catholicism has a dualistic view of reality. Those Christians who dabble, who get sucked into the occult or dabble in those kinds of things, I've heard them say it to me, and I've heard them say it in general, that they have some kind of gift, some kind of spiritual connection, call it what you will, but they can see, they can predict, they have some kind of psychic power, they have some ability to see things that other people can't see. And I had one lady one time tell me, in fact, I walked into this church and she came up to me, and she's a little short lady, about like that, grandma type, and looked up at me and she said, "You're a Virgo." This was a Baptist church, by the way. She walks in, "You're a Virgo." And my first thought in my head was, well, if you look at it from that perspective, yes, she's right. I was born in September. And as it turns out, she was kind of the matriarch of a big clan inside the church, and Native American lady, and very famous. She was used by the state police FBI for locating bodies, locating people. I mean, she had this ability somehow to make these connections. And what she would say is that everything good comes from God. And if my gift is good, then God must have given this to me. So it's okay for me to do this, because I'm just exercising the gift that God gave me to do good. That whole very ability to think like this, which is one of the reasons why Christians can get sucked over into the occult in various levels in that kind of thinking, is because they just see two realms, a natural realm and a supernatural realm. And if God is a resident, so to speak, of the supernatural realm, then if she's able to connect to the supernatural realm and get something helpful or good from it, this must be from God. It's logical. The problem is, it's not biblical. Just because it is good or does good things does not necessarily mean, I mean good from a human perspective, does not necessarily mean it's from God. Because I promise you, and you already know this, I'm just preaching to the choir, not everything that happens in the supernatural realm is good. There was a big rebellion in the supernatural realm, was there not? Yeah. So, God is not a feature, God is not a resident of the supernatural realm. God is not supernatural. God's realm, if you like, and we had to come up with a word for this. We came up with the word ultranatural. Okay? What's above the supernatural? What's beyond? The natural realm is created. That's a created realm. The supernatural realm is a created realm. The ultranatural realm, which exists only because God exists, it's exactly as big as God. Okay? It's not a place where he lives. It is the totality of who he is infinitely. This is the ultranatural realm, and he's the only resident. Nobody lives there, nobody goes there. This is God's realm. Okay? The Bible divides this up exactly like this, right? What's the first heaven? Where does the first heaven belong? There's the first heaven, there's the natural realm. There's the second heaven. This is the abode of angels and demons. Okay? This is the second heaven. There is the third heaven, which is the heaven of God, the ultranatural realm. And so Paul does say, we suspect it's him, that I know a fellow once, he says, who was caught up to the third heaven. What does that mean? It means he was given a glimpse, a vision of that, and that he will not speak of it. He can't speak of it. Jesus even said, no man has seen God at any time. Not even Moses. Isn't that interesting? No man has seen God at any time, yet there seem to be places in the Old Testament where Moses went face to face. Remember, God puts Moses in the cleft of the rock. He said, I'll put my hand, I'll pass by, and you'll see my backside. But yet no one has ever seen God. It's not a contradiction. So something's going on here. That must not be God in his ultranatural pure form, shall we say. But somehow, Paul got a glimpse. He hasn't seen God, because you can't, how could you see God? Because he can't be confined, he's infinite. But somehow, he saw something of God that he can't even talk about, that words cannot describe. And he said, now why did Paul even bring that up? I don't think it's fair, right? He says, I know a guy who was caught by the third heaven. We can't talk about it. Don't ask me questions. We do that to our friends too, don't we? We say, oh yeah, there's something really good. I can't talk about it. Now, I want you to see the three triads. There are three clear triads of reality. The ultranatural, uncreated realm of God, the supernatural created realm of essentially angels and demons, and the natural realm, which has three components, and each one of them has three components. The natural realm consists of three basic things: the biological world, living things, inanimate things, rocks, stars, planets, etc. So the inanimate, non-living. And then the Adam, humankind, Adam, who gets the ball rolling, right? Adam, humans. That's a separate thing. We're kind of like animals. We have a lot of features that animals have, but we're not. Because we're made in the image of God. We have special function in His creation because we are made for a special relationship with Him. And so that's the natural realm. That's easy to see. I mean, we all experience that every day. Then there's the supernatural realm. Now, what's interesting about this, the Bible doesn't clarify this totally. It's a little teeny bit of speculation here, but there are only 3 archangels. The original 3 archangels are Michael, the warrior, Gabriel, the announcer, the verbalizer, and Lucifer, the choir director. Now, we know what happened, don't we? Something happened. And by the way, the triadic nature of the ultranatural realm is a no-brainer. Father, Word, not Son. Word, Holy Spirit. Now, why not Son? Son eventually, but not yet. We're talking about God in the... Son is an incarnational term. Son of man, Son of God. It's an incarnational term. But it is the Word. Now, I don't know how this is going to work because I just threw these together really fast. But I want to show you something. What just happened to Lucifer? Lucifer fell. And it seems in the literature of the Bible that he took a third of the host of heaven with him. His third. His cronies. His guys become demons. And so that third is separated out and they follow Lucifer. But what happens to Lucifer? He's thrown out of heaven, his heaven, second realm, supernatural realm. He's tossed out. Now, not totally, because even in the book of Job, he comes before with the Beni Elohim and all of that. So he's not, that's why I kind of stuck him in the middle here. But he's removed from his position. Whatever his functional position is in that supernatural realm, he is now deposed and he is set as the pursuer of mankind. The accuser of the brethren, so to speak. I mean, he's called many things. Satan, that old devil, the old dragon. But Lucifer falls. And so now his primary focus, God has confined him to do his business vis-a-vis mankind. Walking around as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. That's his business, and his whole entourage, a third of the heavenly host, that's what they do.
But he still has access.
And by the way, aren't we glad that we can't see that? Aren't we glad as we walk around and do our business day to day that we don't have a vision into that realm? Because it would scare us to death, I think, to see what's happening behind the scenes. Now, we know it's there because Paul said himself, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of heavenly things in high places. Okay, principalities and powers. We know that's not people. That's the demonic realm. So it's real, but thankfully, the greater is he who is in us than he who is in the world. So we just don't worry about that too much. We just deal with it as we encounter it on a daily basis in our own lives. But God's given us equipment to do that. God's equipped us to be able to do that. Now, what's interesting here is that when Lucifer fell, God is a good housekeeper. When he set up the triad of triads of his creation, and one part of it glitches, Lucifer falls, leaving a gap in the balance. Who stepped in to fill the gap left by Satan and Satan's rebellion? The Word. The Word became angelic. Who is the angel of Yahweh in the Old Testament? The angel of Yahweh, the center of the angels. Remember, he shows up. There's 3 visitors to Abraham's tent. Yahweh, see, he's not even called the angel of Yahweh. He's just called Yahweh. And these 2 other dudes. Who do you suppose they are? Wink, wink. Probably Gabriel and Michael. And so the Word becomes angelic. Jesus takes on, and by the way, all the old theologians call the angel of Yahweh, and he appears to Joshua, the angel of Yahweh is all, he's the one that gave the 10 Commandments. Remember, the New Testament writers are very clear. The commandments were not given by God per se, they were given by the angel. The book of Hebrews says, if that law, which was that word which was given through angels, proves unchangeable, how much more so shall we be subject to the laws that we have under God? If what proved to be true in the Old Testament was true by the 10 Commandments, the Mosaic Law, given by the angels, the angel of Yahweh, how much more are we going to be held to that which is given by the Son, the Word Himself? So, anyway, that's pretty clear if you take that. Pre-incarnate Christ, all the old theologians called him, and I think that's right. It's not the pre-incarnate Christ. He is in a sense, but he is the pre-incarnate, or the angelified Word. I just invented that word. I don't know. The angelified Word it takes up the space. So now it's all balance. Balance is maintained. Lucifer's deposed, but the balance in the supernatural realm is maintained. It's not going to fall apart because he's able to fill in the gap. Now, watch what happens here. And this is a no-brainer. When Lucifer impacts humanity, and humanity is deposed, notice I've lowered them down from the box. When humanity loses its created function and position in the natural realm, this is a no-brainer. We know what happens now. The Word became flesh. So not only did the Word take up the space left by Lucifer, the Word picked up and took up the space left by the human race, Adam and all the rest of us. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so there you go. Now, that's, in essence, when you read the Bible, when you do theological thinking, think of this structure, because it just works all the way through Scripture. Jesus had, and by the way, what does redemption do for the creation? For us. In Christ, it puts us back into the position we were meant to hold from the creation. Puts us back in the saddle, where we're supposed to be, and glorifies that. That is to say, makes it absolutely unchangeable, unaffectable, and eternal. Makes it permanent, fixed. And I didn't have time to go into all. I've got to really develop all of this into a little bit further PowerPoint, but there's one little element that's not here. Where does Lucifer and all his body of angels, demons go? they no longer fit. They're cast out. They no longer fit. And the wicked who reject God, who reject Christ, no longer fit in this. Where do they go? There is a place, hell, if you like, a dimension, a separate place that is separated from this reality by a vast dimensional gulf. And Jesus even talks about it with the rich man and Lazarus. There's a great gulf fixed, and there can be no movement from one place to the other. He can't come to you, and you can't go to him for all eternity. There's another place, but it's not part of this reality. It's a separate, created reality that was created for what? Hell was not meant for people. It was meant for the devil and his angels. But those who choose to follow him rather than God are going to have to spend eternity there as well. A separate place. And so I didn't put that on here. But where is it? It's not part of this reality. It's not part of this triad of triads. It's a separate reality altogether. And because it cannot touch this. This is untouchable. This is immutable. And it's all held together by the Word. The Word is what holds the supernatural world together, and the Word is what holds our reality together. And what's really neat is that this triad of triads is going to just sail on right through into eternity with a new heaven and a new earth, right? New heaven, a new supernatural realm. Never be a new ultranatural realm. Why? Because that's God. New supernatural realm, new order, new natural realm. Are there going to be creatures in the new natural realm? Yes. Don't know what they're going to look like. Okay. But they're going to be stars, I suppose. And there's going to be a new earth. And I don't know what that looks like. And it has a whole different regime. But it's all coming. So this, if people understand this and will give up the dualistic idea that everything is, that the whole cosmic reality is just a big fight between good and evil. God's fighting on one side, Satan's fighting on the other side. This big cosmic battle. Listen, Satan is not God's equal. He's a creature who rebelled and who will get his due because he's not under the blood of Christ. And everyone who refuses to be put themselves under the blood of Christ will go his way. Will go Lucifer's way. And that's very sad. It's terrible. But what an eternity we have to look forward to. How much, we have any time left?
Yeah, you tell me.
Just a couple of thoughts. Drag in what we just went through, right? Eternal present concept. What would it be like in your resurrected body? Now, Jesus gave us some glimpses, and you've read this, and you know this. There were times after Jesus' resurrection when he seems to show up, and then he's not there, right? Or he's not there, and he shows up. So what's happening? He's obviously a physical body. He has his scars from his crucifixion. He eats. They're able to eat with him and touch him. He has a physical characteristic to him. But they're behind closed doors, and he's not there, and then all of a sudden he is there. That's what the text seems to suggest. Or like on the road to Emmaus, he walks with them and hangs out with them, opens their eyes, and then all of a sudden, at one point in the story, he's just gone. Now, obviously, if you take that in a certain way, it seems, and I do, it seems to be that Jesus' resurrected body, and we are going to have a resurrected body just like his, will be in the likeness of his resurrection, has some capabilities, extra-dimensional capabilities, that the former one didn't have. This is the new resurrected body. And so, what's our resurrected body going to be like? I don't know. I don't even really like to think about it because I have too many questions that I can't answer. You know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I don't know what that body holds, but I want you to think this thought. Right now, we're on fallen time. How much time we got left?
How much time do you need?
This time is always running out. In this life, time is always running out. You got an appointment. You only got to go to 9 o'clock. You got to be somewhere else by 9:30. Time is constantly running out. It's just the nature of it, and you might call it fallen time. But stop and think. When time, and I think there always will be three-dimensional time or fourth-dimensional time as we know it, but I think there may be infinite other dimensions and time signatures in those that we'll be able to experience in the resurrected body, like angels might be able to do that we can't do now. But stop and think about it. When the time that we know now as fallen time, or as just three-dimensional, maybe the fourth dimension, time is the fourth dimension. What if that takes on an eternal quality? What if time was not running out, but conversely opening up? Wow. So I concocted this little scenario in my head about a little moment in the millennium. So say we're in the millennium. Say you're in the New Jerusalem, hanging out in the New Jerusalem. Or maybe not the New Jerusalem, maybe the Jerusalem of the millennium, right? The refabricated city right there during the 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth. And we're hanging out doing administrative stuff or whatever we're supposed to be doing, ruling with him. And so you're walking down, there's a nice little cafe, maybe down near the temple area, and you're meeting Elijah for lunch. Noon, Jerusalem, three-dimensional time, noon. And so you're just casually walking, and you see Elijah hanging out in front, kind of just enjoying the sunshine. And Moses cuts across your path, seemingly in a hurry. And there's always been this question you wanted to ask Moses, because there's gazillions of people up there. You got him right in front of you. You kind of go, Moses, can I ask you a question? But you realize that it's only like 2 minutes till noon. You're supposed to meet Elijah for lunch, and you need to ask this question to Moses. But it's going to take him a good while to answer it. But Moses knows how all this works, right? And so he said, sure, what's your question? So what you and Moses do is you take a little bit of a left or right turn, whichever, into another dimension, which you can just easily do. You just take into that other dimension, and you just hang out with each other, and you talk, and you answer that question. You have a 5, 6, 8, 10-day conversation, and answer all the questions, and really get involved. And then you say, Moses, that was great. Thanks for clarifying all of that stuff. That was fantastic. And he said, see you later. And so you just take a left-hand turn back into three-dimensional space-time, 1 minute before you meet, and you calmly walk down and meet Elijah for lunch. Because time's never running out. Time is opening up eternally in every direction, in every dimension. So I just think, wow, we have all the time to do everything, think everything, ask every question, feel every excitement that we possibly can imagine. I think that would be fun. So anyway, that's just a crazy thought, but it's to me. And by the way, there's a glimpse of that at the Mount of Transfiguration. There's a glimpse of that. Just hours before that happened, Jesus said to his disciples, some of you are standing here who will not taste of death. You will not die until you see me in my kingdom. And then they get to the Mount of Transfiguration. Peter, James, and John wind up with Jesus, and all of a sudden, He's enveloped by light, and his robe is glowing white, and with him conversing is Moses and Elijah. And so the disciples are like just hanging out in their mortal bodies, you know, they're just guys, and they're looking at this going, wow. What are they seeing? I think God has superimposed a moment of time and a piece of space in the millennium and superimposed it on the first century. And Jesus becomes himself, not only of the first century, but of the millennium, of his glorified self. And he's glowing and he's bright. And boy, the guys are like, you know, they wish they had sunglasses. You know, they don't. And but it's Moses and Elijah. And afterward, they're really impressed. But what are they seeing? I think they're seeing the millennium. They're actually seeing Jesus in the kingdom. Just a little window, a little snapshot through a dimensional window of that. But let's go to the other end. This is first century AD. Let's go to the other end. Let's go after the second coming. We're in the millennium. And I think Peter, James, and John one day are going to be hanging out, maybe walking around, and they're going to look over, and they're going to see Moses and Elijah talking to Jesus. And they're going to be kind of a little weird glow about it. They're going to, do you think that's what we saw?
4,000 years old.
And I think Peter says, yeah, let's go over and see if we can peer through that portal and see ourselves what we used to look like. You know? Back through there. But I think that's what it was. I think they literally, I mean, take Jesus at his word. Some of you are standing here who will not taste of death until you see me in the kingdom. And they saw him in the kingdom. So anyway, it's all kinds of little weird vignettes going on in Scripture that I think are understandable when you look at it from this larger point of view. It also, to me, explains the fear, the lack of fear, complete, seemingly, lack of fear for Stephen and the subsequent martyrs. They knew this. Paul said, I would rather die. My desire is to go on to heaven to be with Christ. But I think it's more profitable for you if I stay here. I don't want to, but I think Paul understood this, that death is not a weird episode. It's not a weird chapter. It's not an out-of-body experience. It's the movement from life to ultra-life. Not ultra-light, ultra-life. Okay? It's a movement to that. So, by the way, when did we start our resurrection? The moment we received Christ. We're resurrected. Now, we're not a resurrected body yet, but our spirit, our life we have his life. We are resurrected. And it's only, we're coming up out of the grave. We're not out of it yet. We're out of it, sort of, but one of these days it's going to be total. It's just like he came out of the tomb with a resurrected body. One of these days get a resurrected body. So what are we moving? Life to life. We already dealt with death. We already dealt with death at the cross.
John
Jesus took care of that.
17:2.
Yeah.
John.
Life to life.
Yeah.
Now what is death? That death may be swallowed up by life. I just really like that thought. So, and I also like the thought that all of our loved ones, us if we die first, or all of our loved ones who've gone before us, we're all going to get there at the same time. We're all going to be having fellowship together. We're a body. Death essentially means separation. We're not going to be separated. He's going to gather us all together. We're all going to be there at the same time. The living get translated out. Those who are already dead are already just there anyway. Okay. So I just think these are things that are interesting to think about. But I think as you read the Bible, you can start seeing these things pop up. Wow, now I understand what he meant by that. Yeah.